Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be here, and congratulations to all of you who have just come into the Geetham campus. I'm sure you have an exciting journey ahead. Of course, I will be back on the Cortelia campus soon to interact with the students and teach my elective. But this is a series that we have now launched for all of you, the Geetham Conversations, where the entire intent of the program is to not just introduce you to people from different walks of life, but also to be able to share their personal, professional journeys. For those of you who have just started on in your education fields right now, in the next few years, you will be wanting to ideate, to dream big, to fly high, and for that, you definitely gain from people who have had very exciting adventures and journeys themselves. And I'm very glad to have, in fact, somebody who's kicking off this conversation series with us here, who's young, who's dynamic, who's had an adventurous, in fact, journey. And I'm sure that the more questions you ask, please do not hesitate to ask questions. The ones who are coming in, if you could quickly settle down, please. And just a quick reminder, please put your phones on silent mode. I have with me here Kavikrut. He is he's been, of course, the Chief Growth Officer for OYO since 2014. He's also gone to BITS Pilani. He's done his MBA in finance and then later on to Harvard. He is a Hyderabadi boy in the sense that Hyderabad is home, but he's also been around the country because of his father who was in the army and his postings. Kavikrut, many thanks for joining us here in this session.
Thank you, Smita.
Does this bring back memories of your first day in college?
It does, it does. Back in Pilani, we have a similar sized auditorium. The only difference is that I don't remember anyone holding up phones. We had no phones in 2002. I think the first telecom tower showed up in 2004. So I think just to keep it real, I'll ask everyone to keep your phones away. Everything that we're doing here is available on YouTube, so you don't need your phones. So keep it away. I've kept mine away too. If you guys pick yours, I'll pick mine in the middle of the session. So, and I'm sure we'll make the conversation fun. It is also a fantastic way to feel really old, seeing so many young faces together in one place.
I think it's all right. You're young as long as you are doing new things every day. As long
I think your mic's off.
Story to tell.
Is Smita's mic on?
Is my mic working?
No,
Is my audio all right?
I know there's no mic. No, it's on. No, you're good.
Okay, to begin with, how many of you here have actually heard of OYO Rooms?
I'm surprised there are people who haven't heard.
How many of you have stayed in OYO Rooms? Okay, so at least that sets the mood in the room here, that you guys are aware of the brand that Kavi has helped build over the years. But we are going to first talk about Kavi's own personal growth and journey. Kavi, your name stems from the fact, somebody who's into poetry, are you? It's no. Kavi is a poet.
Not at all.
Not at all?
Zero poetry.
Okay, not even like reading poetry?
No poetry. This was my dad's creativity, so I think he came up with it. That was the last bit of poetry.
But you do blog a lot. You're a blogger?
I used to long ago when blogging was still a thing. Now I just make notes and share it with people who care.
So, Kavi, you were born into a family. Your father was in the army. You were moving around the country. How was it as a child, as a young student, going into new places, adjusting with new friends constantly? Are there any army brats here, army kids here?
Navy and Air Force counts too.
Yeah, or armed forces?
There's one there, yeah. 2,
okay.
3, 4.
So I think you will relate. Tell us, about some of your fondest memories of your journeys then.
I think it's a very, very different childhood. It's very, very different from what many people think childhood is. So just to explain, my oldest friend is my brother, longest, right? Because I've known him for so long. So we change schools every 3 years, sometimes 2 years. When my dad was posted in Goa, because we didn't get into the right school, we actually changed 4 schools in 3 years, right? So typically you spend evenings working and copying notes with your parents so that you can catch up a few months in. And you change teachers, homes, neighbors, neighborhoods, friends, classrooms every 3 years. I think when people who come from more quote-unquote civilian backgrounds, when they think of it, it can appear very unstable and it can appear like disruptive. But actually, I think my childhood was one of the best things that happened to me. It's very easy. It's very easy to connect with people from different backgrounds. It's very easy to feel comfortable in any city we go to, and I think that makes a huge difference.
So, also tell us, because of course you said you spent a couple of years in Goa also. How different why did you decide to pursue a career in finance? Was that something you had thought about? Were there any other interests? Did you at any point in time feel like you wanted to join the armed forces?
I did. My mom wasn't too keen, so I let it go. But this is a good question. How many of you here are in disciplines that you truly wanted? Like if you wanted engineering, computer science, but you ended up in electrical or something else. So how many of you are, no, actually, let me ask it this way. How many of you are in disciplines that you didn't want, which was not your first choice? Come on, be honest, it's all right. I'm raising my hand too. There's quite a few people here. I actually didn't want to study. I didn't even know there was finance in BITS Pilani. When we were in Goa in '96, my dad's office was the first computer with internet in Goa, in all of Goa, because it was a military, setup. His computer was the first to get internet. So I was fascinated by internet and computers. And from '96 through 2002, I spent all my time learning, computers and even programming. So my goal was actually to go to a good school and study computer science. But I didn't get into the best schools of India with computer science. I could have studied computer science at some other university, and I got finance in BITS Pilani, which was not the, how many of you know that Pilani has a finance degree? See, like, most people don't even expect BITS Pilani to have a finance degree. So, but what I had learned from my childhood, segueing back to what you said, Smita, is that more than the discipline, the company of people matters. So it was less about the subject, finance. And someone I know told me this, and they said that your childhood, you've always met interesting people and had the company of really interesting, good people. So BITS Pilani has all these smart kids. And even though you will end up being one of the lowest ranked students in one of the least respected disciplines, you'd rather go to BITS Pilani than go to some other university. And BITS Pilani has this very interesting, maybe it's here in Geetham also, it has this very interesting thing where your ID number is actually your rank at admissions. So I still remember 23 years later, when I was sitting where you guys are, my BITS Pilani ID is 2002 C7PS 839.
Wow.
So C7, 2002 is my batch, C7 is finance. Now 839, the last 3 digits is interesting. It's basically your rank order in the entire class. So BITS Pilani has about 950 students. I was 839. So if you're a state topper, like Hyderabad, back then it was Andhra Pradesh, one state. So back then AP topper was 007. Right? So
very James Bond.
Very James Bond. Russell was his name. So when I got to BITS Pilani and I found out that my number is 839, you're actually already starting at a very low confidence. You've gone to one of the best universities in India. You don't have engineering, you have finance. And when you talk to a friend and they ask you what's your ID and you say 839, you're like, okay, it's 839. It's one of the lowest out of 950 or so. And these IDs still carry on. Funnily enough, this Sunday is Bitsians Day, where globally a lot of Bitsians will come together. And we'll all tell our IDs and everyone's like, you are 839. So back to your question, I actually didn't ever plan that I will get finance. I always wanted to be a computer science student. But I ended up doing finance and I'm glad I did. I learned business very early in life.
But later on, you didn't pursue computer science in any way? I mean, when you were in a position to make your own life choices and decisions?
No, I didn't. I think one of the things, and we'll talk about it through the next, 20 minutes, one of the things I learned the hard way is that a lot of people have assumptions around what they want their life to be. Like, I want to do this university, I want to go to this campus, and I want this discipline. And it's also what your parents tell you. But I think only 2 out of 10 students, like you saw in the survey we just did, actually get that. And the remaining 8 spend probably their first 5-10 years of their life feeling bad that they didn't get the the version of life that they wanted, including their parents and friends. Everyone's like, you wanted computer science, but you got finance. But I've learned the hard way that life is about playing the balls that it throws at you. Like if you think of it like cricket, you can't choose which over, what ball, which venue you're playing at. You're at the wicket and somebody's throwing and bowling balls at you. You got to make the best of what comes your way. So that's just how we started.
So, then you went to Harvard as well. What is, there is a lot of fascination, justifiably so, that we have for Ivy League schools. How many of you aspire to, go to some of the big universities in America, UK? Okay, many of you would like to pursue it overseas.
Yeah, they haven't even finished their first degree. They already want to study more. I'm surprised.
Well, so Kavi, what is the one sort of difference you felt when you were in Harvard, and which maybe a lot of business schools in India are yet to learn from, or there could be things that we have done better now?
No, I think it wasn't one thing. It was a couple of things. One, and this is probably slightly controversial to say, but I think the quality of professors and teachers was vastly different, right, in these schools versus others. The second difference was that any course you pick, any subject you pick, you are, as an Indian student who's always been in India, and you go from India to the US, you're pretty much the dumbest per student in the room. You're the 839 in the room versus others. So that I think makes a huge difference on what you learn. And three is just exposure. In India, because you're born here and you grow up here, when you step out of the university, there's not a lot to do. Everything is inside the university. Our campus lives are about what's inside the campus. I think a lot of Ivy League schools, like if you go to Columbia in New York, you're in one of the most interesting cities in the world.
Why would you say that, you would perhaps feel like the dumbest in the room? Because in India, we feel that our best of minds are going off to these universities and leagues.
I think the quality or the bar of talent, smartness, practicality is much, much higher when you go to Harvard or a Columbia or a Stanford. So there's that. So here also, you feel like, there's a lot of smart talent, but I think what fascinates a lot of people here in general about going to a Harvard or a Stanford is the exclusivity, right? So it's so hard to get in. And once you get in, everybody else is pretty much way smarter and accomplished than you are.
Now, tell me, when did you find the spirit of entrepreneurship in you? I think you had launched a company on the day you passed out of college.
I did. This is an interesting story. So we were finance students studying finance. And somewhere in the third year in 2003 of my 4-year course, there was a business plan competition that launched. This is very common now. Every university has a business plan competition. But the first ever business plan competition in India was called Conquest. This was in BITS Pilani back in 2004. And I don't know, how many of you know what a business plan competition is? See, I mean, it's still not very popular. How many of you know what a quiz is? Everybody knows what a quiz is. So business plan competition is you have a business idea and you write a 20-page document, which is called a business plan, which talks about simple things. What is the problem you're solving? How will you make money? Who is your typical customer? A bunch of those things. So, and you fill up, this, long document, you put it together and you go and present it to a jury. And then they grade you and you either win or lose the competition.
Like an earlier version of Shark Tank?
Probably. Shark Tank is much more famous now. Correct.
Okay. Shark Tank, you guys have heard?
Yeah,
okay, we'll come to Shark Tank in a short bit from now.
So we were doing the Shark Tank of Pilani. And a friend of mine came up with this idea of taking doctors in vans to villages. The idea was very simple. Because we were in Pilani in a small village, we knew that a lot of patients were all around us. Even the healthcare facilities we had access to was very poor. Even today, there is only one hospital in the town of Pilani called Sarvajanik Hospital, which Birlas run. So he said that, look, we are economics and finance students. Supply is in cities, demand is in villages. How do we bridge it? We were very simple people. So we said, let's put a van and drive doctors to the patients in villages. So we wrote this business plan. It actually did very well. We actually won the first ever competition. We won it, Shark Tank of Pilani. We won it because we were the only finance students. Everybody else was engineering. So they didn't know as well as how to do financial statements and write a business plan. We won 30,000 rupees back then from that competition. That was the prize money. And we were all very happy because the money was good. And then by the time I graduated, we found a very good mentor. This gentleman called Anupendra, who was based in the US. He found us. He was a BITS alumni. And he said, let me help you develop your idea. So by the time I graduated in 2006, we had taken this business plan, which was literally a document. There were 5 of us. We had taken it to about 8 universities across India and to the world. And by the time we graduated, we had won about 5 of these competitions. And we kept winning because of 2 big reasons. And Geetam, I think, is very well positioned that way too. One was because we were finance students, so our business plan was one of the strongest compared to others who didn't know financial statements. And second was we were in Pilani, so our customer and our market was actually right outside of the campus. So we had to just step out of our gate to know what a local rural health clinic looks like, what do patients really want. So we could do a lot of interviews, and business plan was very realistic. I was also, my dad, because he was in the army, he got this digital camera. So this sounds funny, but now nobody has a digicam, we all use phones. But the first digicam was with me in our campus back in 2004. So we were going with a small camera and we were taking videos and photos of patients and doctors around Pilani. So the visual content, the strength of the business plan, and the fact that our market was outside our campus made us special, and we won. So I was graduating, and by then we had amassed about $30,000 in prize money from 30,000 rupees.
That's something, $30,000, and he hasn't even graduated.
Yeah, no, this was a team of 5 people. It wasn't just me.
But
what was interesting was that, do you guys know how much is a dollar to a rupee right now? Any guesses? Wow.
83, 84, yeah.
Okay, you guys are good at this.
They all have American dreams. They know the dollars.
So back in 2006, when we were graduating, it was 40 rupees or so to the dollar. So we had about 12 lakhs in the bank, basically, when we were graduating. And the BITS Pilani education back then was about 2.5 lakhs per person. And we all came from like middle class backgrounds. So the decision we had to take between 5 of us was, there's 12 lakh rupees in the bank. Should we just split it 5 ways, which was approximately 2.5 lakhs, and just pay for our education, say thank you to our parents, and not using their money, because you paid for your education, and just call it quits. But luckily, everybody was interested in the idea, and we wanted to start the company. So day one, we graduated, we invested 12 lakhs. We opened a bank account, we invested in the company's name. Actually, on the first day of graduating, I was 22. I took a bus from Pilani to New Delhi, went to Malviya Nagar, and we actually bought a second-hand Maruti van, and we drove back to Pilani. So,
the joy of your first car is just a different level. I mean, you can drive the fanciest SUVs later on in life. My first car from my first salary was a Maruti 800. And I think I still love that car.
This was technically the company's car.
The company's car. Does any of you have is there a budding entrepreneur in the room here who already has a plan that you are looking for investments for?
Good.
Who's there? Can somebody take a mic? I just want to have a quick interaction. Student volunteers, can we just get a mic to this young girl here? So, did you also face rejections in, and I'll come to you. This one, young girl here. What's your name and what's the idea that you're working on?
Hi, I'm Manisha Veluri. I'm actually a freelance writer. So I started my company last month. So I'm still in the works of, getting it actually started. So
what kind of a company is this?
So it's a writing solutions agency. So I am a creative writer and a content writer. So I want to expand that idea. And I actually want to have a business empire.
Business empire?
Yeah, I have a lot of creative talents. So
I think she needs a round of applause for the level of ambition and dreaming and confidence. Only then the results will follow.
Yeah. So the first one that I wanted to explore was writing.
Okay.
And the next is fashion. The third is music. And the fourth is a restaurant. So,
Fascinating. I wish...
I'll be lining up outside your restaurant as and when it opens up.
I hope to see you both.
I wish I had that aspiration when I was, first year in school. But by the way, it's doable because my boss is Ritesh and he's 29 years old.
Yes.
So he started in college, as many of you know him. So
all the best to
Thank you.
Lovely. There's somebody else with a mic there who wanted to share? Anybody else? Who has a dream for an entrepreneurship project at this point? No? Okay, we'll come back later. So, he mentioned Ritesh, of course, who was just 19-year-old and traveling and going to these accommodations, which was very difficult, where he came up with the idea of OYO Rooms, of trying to make it cost-sustainable, affordable, a home away from home. And you associated with OYO in 2014.
That's right.
How did that association begin? And, how was it the initial years? Were you guys also facing a lot of failures, a lot of rejections? Tell us something bit about that.
Yeah. So I went to business school and I came straight back after graduating. which was 2013. Most of my relatives and friends thought I've lost my mind because you go to the US to never come back. But I came straight back after graduating, and my goal was to start a company. But I didn't have an idea like you do, multiple ideas. So I decided to work for some time, and I joined Amazon India in 2013. How many of you have shopped on Amazon? So
Raised a hand, then it's really surprising.
yeah, no, I think what's interesting is, does anybody know when Amazon launched in India? Wild guess? 2010, I heard. Any other guesses? 12. Actually, it's 2013. It's only 10 years ago. It's now part of our everyday lives, and you saw the number of hands go up. But it's only 10 years ago that you could order something online from Amazon. Flipkart was already there, but Amazon was. So I joined Amazon very early in the early teens, and I got the opportunity to launch warehouses in India, which was amazing. I did that for 1.5 years. I really enjoyed working at Amazon. But there was this bug, like you were mentioning, of starting a company, because I had done that before. And I just quit my Amazon job without anything in my hand. I had gotten married by then. Luckily, my wife was very supportive. So she was like, fine, I will pay the bills. I will...
You were a really young groom at that point in time.
Really, not really. I was 29, I think, but 30 almost. But she said she will give me a 100-day pass and she'll pay all the bills and everything else. So I took a 100-day pass from her. She even was paying for my Harvard loan. And for 3 months, I decided to just explore ideas and try to figure out what I want to do next. I started meeting a lot of founders and startups in India. I started meeting a lot of venture capitalists. By 2014, the startup market in India had obviously, the ecosystem was much more bigger. So a chance meeting, actually, someone introduced me to Ritesh. He was 20 years old that time. I spoke to him, I met him about his idea. Back then, OYO had about 20 hotels, in India, actually only in Delhi, Gurgaon, and Noida. And two new leaders had joined the company, Abhinav Sinha and Anuj Tejpal. So there were 3 people in the room when I showed up. And it was a small company with 60 employees, That's it. And as soon as I got into the room, I met Ritesh, Abhinav, and Anuj. It was very clear to me again, like at Harvard, Amazon, and many other things that I've done in my life, that I am the dumbest guy in the room. And to me, that became a principle in general, to be the dumbest person in the room, because you learn so much from everyone else around it. I really didn't understand the idea then, and I didn't know what OYO was trying to do. But I felt like there is something special happening here. So I just joined. I cut my 100-day pass short by about 30 days.
Behind every successful man, there indeed is a woman.
There is, for sure.
There was the very supporting wife who was helping me out financially.
Yeah, and the mom who stopped me from going to the army. So.
Yeah, and the mom, of course, who made sure that he didn't go to the army instead. But, of course, you've been a large part of the OYO story, and including when you ventured into Japan. You've been a part of the OYO successes, the OYO ups and downs, also of many controversies, because over the years, OYO has faced several severe services complaints in Japan, because SoftBank was backing all of you. At one point in time, you promised, I think, 1 million rooms or something on the whiteboard. You could only deliver 8,000 rooms perhaps in a year.
I'm surprised you know that.
Yes, I'm a journalist. And this was happening on the back of when the WeWork project was crashing, which was also supported by SoftBank at that point in time.
Yeah.
So how did you learn, what make you learn from that? Do you deny when you're criticized? Do you learn from it? What is your approach to it?
No, I think I'm quoting Ritesh on this. Every overnight, success takes, many years to build, if you think about it. So OYO has been a very tough journey. Almost every year, we feel like the company will shut down. There will be some crisis that hits us. Like one of the most easy to relate crisis in the group is COVID. So in 2020, when COVID hit, we felt like the company will shut down. But every year something happens. When WeWork happened, we felt like a lot of SoftBank companies may not get funding and it's going to be a difficult time. So yeah, we have gone through many ups and downs over the years. I think what gets celebrated mostly in the media and is just success stories. I think we've learned 3 hard things from our failures, including my own personal failures. One of the things I do often at OYO is start new businesses. So over the last 8.5 years at OYO, I have launched about 6 new businesses. 2 of them shut down. One of them actually spectacularly failed. 2 of them survived, 1 turned profitable, out of the 6 that I have done. And then you're doing a lot of other experiments. I think 3 of the things that we've learned from these failures, one is that you have to keep experimenting and trying new things. Otherwise, you will not know what's right. especially if you're innovating, trying to build new business models. The second thing we've learned is that it is very, very important to have constant check-ins and keep course correcting regularly, right? And it is not necessarily wrong to accept failure and then go and fix those things. And the third thing, the SoftBank story that you were mentioning, is sometimes when you're a startup and you have big dreams, like she was already talking about 4 businesses, right? I think sometimes what aspiration does is it creates, it blinds you, and it makes you believe you can do anything, and without
You
actually
start punching above your weight
Correct.
a lot of times, or you move in too fast into the markets.
Correct. And I think punching above the weight is fine. Promising way above your weight is where problems begin, because you set such high expectations that you stop understanding what could be practical and real. And so I think both of the first 2 things that I mentioned, it's okay to accept failures, keep experimenting, innovating, trying new things, and keep doing constant check-ins. I think that keeps it in balance. So I think having a high aspiration is very important, but we have to always underpromise and overdeliver.
How many of you have heard of the WeWork story? Okay. Satya, you don't count. There's just one person there.
You guys should look it up.
And you've not watched We Crashed, which is a series on Apple. Okay, you should definitely look it up if you haven't. It's a very interesting series. And you know how an idea germinates, it becomes big, and then how the bubble can burst often. There are a lot of lessons to be learned from that story. At this point in time, let me do a quick check. Are there any questions in the room? Please feel free to raise your hands. And don't think that whether it's a dumb question, a stupid question, it could be a personal question. Just feel free to ask, guys, because this session is meant for all of you to take away food for thought when you go out of this room. If you have questions, please raise hands. Otherwise, I'll be happy to keep chatting with Kavi.
This is boring, by the way. I'd love to answer questions.
I think this...
Any and all kind of questions are welcome.
Did you raise your hand for a question? Or were you waving out to your friends?
He was calling his friends back.
Oh, in the back seat. Guys, think of your questions. I'll come back to you again for the audience round. Okay, I have somebody here. I see 2 hands. New students usually take a little time to warm up. Can we have the mics there, please, quickly? Where are the mics? Don't keep sending the mics back. Just keep them with you, please, on the floor. Can I have one mic?
One's there.
Hi, sir. My name is Rakesh.
Atish.
Rakesh.
Rakesh, nice to meet you.
Is there any meaning for the word OYO?
Yes, there is. Good question. It actually stands, we don't use it anymore, but it stands for on your own. That's what OYO means. And the story behind it is that Ritesh, during his younger days when he used to travel, and many of you will relate with it, his parents only went to cities where there were relatives. So if there's no relative in Goa, you can't go to Goa, right? And when you go to relatives, there's only one TV, so everybody's thinking, who's remote, what are you going to do? So Ritesh, he said that I will build a hotels company or hotels where you don't have to worry about, depending on relatives. You can go anywhere you want, you can watch any channel you want, you're on your own. That's basically how OYO's name came up, but now we don't talk about it as much.
And that's why you see this wordplay in the poster right behind you. How to build your dreams on your own.
I saw that.
That was a wordplay thanks to Satya and the team
Satya
as
got
well.
it right. That's the full form.
They got it right. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Mohit. My question is, how does OYO differentiate itself from Airbnb?
Good question. What is your guess, Mohit?
Airbnb wasn't in India. Airbnb launched in India in 2016.
Yeah, it's been here for a long time. But if you ask the question, I also want to hear from you. What do you think is the difference?
Stayed in an OYO room? Have you booked through OYO? Ever?
No.
Have you stayed in an Airbnb?
No.
No.
Okay, who knows the difference between an Indigo and a Make My Trip? Indigo Airlines and Make My Trip, what's the difference?
Make My Trip is actually a group of it's a combined group of airlines. You can actually book many airlines from
Correct.
Make My Trip, and then Indigo, there's only one airline in there.
So that's the clue. Amazon, Make My Trip, Airbnb are what the internet world calls marketplaces, Mohit, which is basically a seller, which is, for example, a home or a flight, meets a buyer, like on Amazon. A seller who's selling books meets Mohit who wants to buy a book. So they are just matching platforms where you can do payment, returns, customer service, and it provides a bunch of bouquet of services. OYO is slightly different. It's also not like Indigo or Marriott or Taj. OYO is a combination of a marketplace as well as having direct control or influence over operations of these hotels. So imagine Amazon having marketplace, which is, you're buying, say, for example, a book. But Amazon also printing its own books that sell on Amazon and having very high control on the sellers and influencing sellers to provide a better experience. So Airbnb is a pure play marketplace which matches your holiday needs with somebody who's providing a home or a hotel. With OYO, it's not like that. All the hotels are OYOs. We work directly with the partners. When you book, you don't book with Kavi's home, you actually book an OYO, right? So we are what's called a full stack model in the internet marketplace. You're welcome to look at full stack model versus marketplaces in internet. That's the fundamental difference between what we do and what Airbnb does.
It's not just a mere aggregator of different hotels. It's basically also hotels that they are controlled and owned by OYO, and there is a consistency to all their hotels.
Yeah, we don't own hotels, but we have significant consistency. We use technology to provide some predictability to the experience.
Okay.
So, but very good question, Mohit. Well done, Mohit.
Anybody else here at this point?
Thanks for opening the floor and setting the flow.
Who else? Let me see some hands. I thought I had another hand raised. So, but Kavi, when it comes to, of course, these OYO rooms and all, I know the company has a concept called supermen on the ground who are doing your strikes, who are doing your security checks. But we do get to see a lot of OYO rooms that are in narrow lanes, in crowded lanes. You see the OYO logos. A lot of places that may look shady, a lot of places that you hear a lot of services complaints about. How do you go about ensuring that standards are maintained, especially today when people actually do want value for their money? You have a more conscious tourist and a clientele today.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think one of the biggest things that first we should admit is there is a long way to go. It's a very, very difficult business to crack. It is also difficult to provide that kind of customer service. So I think we are learning and growing along the way. I don't think like most of India's hotels are actually in the second lanes and the third lanes of India, like our Kirana stores. So I don't think the location being in a second lane is a problem. I think it serves different kinds of customers and it serves different kinds of clientele. Our goal is to provide as much transparency as possible to that. I think what is not good is if you show up and you get a surprise, right? Saying I was expecting this hotel to be at a certain location and at a certain place, but you end up seeing the hotel look different. So I think matching those expectations, creating as much transparency as possible, I think is what we are striving for. But we have a long way to go. It's very difficult. It's hard, and I think we're trying our best. We care about it, and you will see things improve.
Okay, now coming to the difficult question, and which also brings me to Shark Tank. Again, let me just see how many of you have actually watched Shark Tank.
Wow, everyone has watched.
Wow, the Indian version too.
I think they mean the Indian version.
The Indian version? Okay, because I haven't watched, but I've read the reviews and they seem to be pretty mixed up and controversial. Anybody here wanting to tell me what you found interesting about Shark Tank that helped you? Or you did not like about Shark Tank? Anybody, take a mic and tell me. In the corner, will you just give us a sense? Guys, come on, if you don't interact with Kavi at this point in time,
Someone's
let
right
me,
here.
okay, pass the mic here and then I'll come back to you also.
Hello, I'm Uday. So
Hi,
the one thing that I like the most about the Shark Tank is that they really help the young entrepreneurs, like whether it comes under the rule of like agriculture sector, whether they are into tech. As we all know, like in the very traditional way, in the like back then, they don't have any support like for the investors and all. So like they now support a lot. So we do have a very easy way to just go there and like pitch out what are our ideas, so they'll invest there. And the one thing that I don't like is Ashnir Grover, like he taunts a lot about the investors when they don't like the pitching and all.
Over criticism doesn't help.
Yeah.
So, what is your advice to people? How difficult is getting the money? And of course, unless you have a supportive wife to start with and put in some seed money and seed fund. But how difficult is it to get money and investments? And when somebody is walking up to an investor, what is the one or two things that they need to focus on to get the investor's attention?
Yeah, it's not difficult to raise money. If you're committed and you have some traction and you have clarity of thought, the idea actually doesn't matter as much. You will be able to raise money. But I'll expand your question a little bit, Smita, to say how do you raise money? What do you do if you have an idea? I'll expand the question to also answer what do you do if you have an idea while you're in college, right? While you're in a university campus like this. I think there are a couple of things that you should do. If you have an idea and you care about it, you should know that being in college is actually some of the best times of your life. You have a lot of freedom to work on an idea like this. So just get out of your hostel room or where you're staying and go to customers, find partners, find sellers, talk to professors, and start experimenting with your idea. It is much, much easier to do that than people think, right? So for example, if one of you has an idea it sounds weird, but if you have an idea to sell books online, you write, and books that are not available in the library here, just start a WhatsApp group and start adding people who you think like books and start meeting your customers and start selling online. So the first thing that I'm trying to say is get started. Find an easy, simple way to get started, and this is very easy today because of Instagram, WhatsApp, and so many other things. An idea is only worth what you do with its execution. Otherwise, an idea is just on paper and it doesn't matter at all. And as college students, you can do it, right? So gain some traction, go out there, test your idea, start talking to customers. I think the second thing that you should do is, because you are as a student, also research and think what other companies are doing things that you want to do. And there's a lot out there with internet and with everything else. There's so much happening in the US. I think do that and learn about other similar ideas. The problem is that, like Mohit was asking us, you think that OYO and Airbnb are similar. But when I explained the answer to you, Airbnb is also very similar to Amazon and MakeMyTrip, right? So find analogous examples to compare to, proxy examples, and study them and figure out what they did right. I think that's very important. And the third is quite simple. I think find opportunities and avenues to go out of campus. You are very lucky to be in Hyderabad, and Geetam also is in Bangalore and many other cities. There is a very thriving startup ecosystem here. Get out of campus when you get a chance and when you're allowed to, and go and explore the world outside. This is also Ritesh's story. He was in Kota and he had actually joined college, and he would often go to Delhi and he would go to these entrepreneurship conferences. And that's actually, and I'm not suggesting you should drop out of college. Not on first day.
Run out of this session right now, but yeah, attend.
Not in this session, but you get out and see what's out there in the world.
Yeah, I think it's important to keep these things in mind. And when Kavi says that you got to sell your ideas, that's where communication comes in. That's where comes in your ability to ask questions, to go out and project yourself confidently, to be able, for instance, to just stand up in this room, take a mic, and talk about what is important to you, because these are the opportunities that help you build that path moving forward. Many of you may, of course, get into, a 9-to-5 job. Some of you may get into a private job, but I'm sure there will be a handful of you who will want to start your own companies at the end of the day and be your own boss. That's where these experiences will count a lot. And it's interesting that Kavi mentions that use social media as a first platform of communication. How many of you are on Instagram? Okay.
It's interesting, some are not.
How many of you are really majorly into Insta Reels, Facebook Shorts and all of that, and YouTube Shorts and Insta Reels?
Not a lot.
Okay, some are raising their hands very hesitantly. Kavi has stopped being on social media. He has the luxury of not actually being on LinkedIn, on Insta, on Twitter.
I'm surprised people are clapping.
There is an over-exhaustion. I think there is an over-exhaustion. Yeah. But did you use social media a lot in your initial years when the boom happened?
Yeah, of course I did. I did, and I still do when I need to. It's just that I think the way I think about it is because you're always glued to your phone. I think you have to be really careful about when you're on your phone and what you're doing, and also when you're not on your phone. I don't know how many of you noticed, but my phone's here, but it's actually screen is turned down. Can you guys see? And that's because it keeps lighting up. And every time it lights up, something happens in your head. It's almost impossible to have a conversation like this. I just don't do this when I'm on a stage with someone like you, Smita. But even when you're in meetings, you're at home on the dinner table. I think keeping it away is important. And I feel like every time I pick it up, Instagram or social media or Facebook, WhatsApp is the first thing you go to. So actually not having it is much easier, and opening it when you want. So it's the same. I think I'm not against social media. I think it's very useful in many ways and it's good for everybody to use. But I think as students, we didn't have this opportunity when we were students because there was no internet and there was no Instagram. But I think there is higher responsibility on everyone here to decide how much time they want to spend on it.
You know, when I was in college, my first phone was a little Motorola. And it could only take in 10 messages in the inbox. After the 10th message, the inbox would flash a light saying that the inbox is full. There was no camera in it. I couldn't click a photo with it. It was essentially for calling and for texting purposes. And now, of course, you have entire films that are being made. I have my phone for my notes. As a journalist, it's a luxury to stay away from my phone and detoxify. I wish I could do that. So sometimes it's good to just connect with people instead of gadgets. Let me see if there are any more questions here at this point.
Yes.
Somebody's raised. Yeah.
Right
There,
behind.
right behind you. Here. Let's take this one and then
Hello, I'm Sriram. I have two questions. What's your opinion on the Theranos scam? I hope you have an idea about it. And what do you feel about banks collapsing? Do they have an impact on startups? Like recently there was a Silicon Valley bank crash which happened. What do you feel about that?
Wow, Sriram, very loaded questions. Theranos was unfortunate. I think if they would have been able to do what they wanted to do, it would have been good for mankind in general. There is no opinion on Theranos. It's pretty straightforward. There is court cases running. It was just blatant lies. It was fraud. So I don't have an opinion. It's facts. And I hope that both as students as well as professionals later in your lives, and if you're building startups or working at companies, you stick to the truth. Right? So I think that's pretty straightforward. On banks, yes, it has an impact on startups. But just to clarify, no bank in India has crashed yet in the recent past. The stories that you're referring to are primarily to Silicon Valley banks. It has an impact, on startups in general. All macroeconomics have impact in startups. Startups rely on external fundraising to start, at least early on. And startup investing is always risky. So if banks crash, if the market is not good, there is lesser capital available, startups will pretty much get it at the end, right? So it has a very direct impact on startups. There is much more detailed macro and microeconomic conversations we can have on it, but that's the most straightforward way to understand it. Thank you, Sriram.
there's a question there. Go ahead.
Hi, sir. My name is Danvi. So, at OYO, what do you use AI for? And what are the major problems do you face that you think AI can solve?
Great question. Great question. I didn't catch your name, Ranveer?
So, Danvi.
Danveer. Okay, nice to meet you. You can sit down.
Same to you.
Great question. Very good question. How many of you have used Netflix? Okay, good. Have you guys realized how for the same show, your friend or your family member might get a different cover? Have you guys noticed that for the same show? Okay, great. That's basically personalized and it's run by AI. So for example, even at OYO, we have something called, I'm giving you one example. We have something called as the hero image, which is basically the first photo of the hotel that you see. That first photo could be the facade of the hotel. It could be a photo of the room. It could be a photo of the neighborhood. All of our hotels across the world, more than 150,000 hotels, actually their photo carousel or photo slideshow relies on an AI engine, right? And based on and it's constantly flipping these first photos to see which one results in the highest number of bookings, millions of changes a day. And it automatically will show you which photo you're most likely to make a booking on. Right? So this is purely built by AI. There is no human sitting and trying to figure this out. This is one place where we use AI in different formats. Another place where we use AI, and again, this is interesting as students, you're always looking for the cheapest product or deal. So if you go on OYO and you try to book a cheap room, like at a good deal, you will see, and many of you who've used OYO here will know that the price changes very often. It's a bit like airlines, and you can almost not predict what will happen to the price. We have an AI engine, and it's one of the first that we built actually for the hotel industry, which is constantly changing prices. We do over 60 million price changes in a day. And this is fully automated. It's AI engines that run it. They're constantly balancing supply and demand to see how many people are, for example, searching for Patancheru on the OYO app, and how many rooms are currently available. And it is constantly mapping, the price to the right thing. This has happened in many industries. Like many of you would have experienced surge pricing on Uber. That is based on the same thing. But in OYO, we don't just apply surge, we also drop prices to fill rooms. And you know, that's AI. And the reason this is important to understand is that at OYO, it looks like we're selling room nights, but if you don't sell a room tonight, it perishes. You can't sell tonight's room night, you know, tomorrow. So while a hotel may have 20 rooms, you have only 20 opportunities to sell tonight. So price optimization is very important. So these are some long-standing ways we've used, but we are very excited with ChatGPT and with everything else that's happening in generative AI. And our teams are constantly exploring new ways to implement what to do with AI.
I was in Goa before coming in here on a quick break, and I sent a photo of this OYO signature in one of the regions in Goa, and prompt came as reply that this was the first signature launch in Panjim.
Yeah, it's the first hotel we launched in Goa.
Yeah, so whose idea was this to bring out that OYO signature across?
Yeah, we did. That's like a graffiti that's happened there. It's like an art on the wall. That specific one, you know, somebody came up with the idea in the team.
But why do you keep changing the logo colors between black and red? And
I think there are multiple reasons. We are constantly trying to give a refreshed image of the company, one. And two, it also has to reflect multiple brands that we launch. One of the launch brands we have is OYO Townhouse, which is gray and black and red in color. So it's that. And third is we have a lot of old boards. Hotels, especially after COVID, a lot of hotels don't work with OYO anymore. So we slowly, constantly keep changing. And look, this is a startup, not just logos. Your AI technology, your people, everybody is constantly, you know, evolving and improving what we do.
anyone else has a question here?
I think there was a hand. Yeah,
I can
sure.
see these two questions we'll take.
There was a hand that went up behind there in the AI section of the room. And there.
Hello, sir. I'm
Hi.
Deepika. Can you explain how data and analytics play a role in growth decision-making strategies in OYOs?
Wow. Okay. Yes. Great question. I think if you think of any decision, not just growth, if you think of marketing, you think of any form type of decision, it's purely based on two things. One, hypotheses, where you think that this might be happening, and then you get data to sort of map to that hypothesis and prove it or disprove it. We are constantly looking at, for example, in growth, which is also marketing, we are constantly looking at, you know, data to see how our ads are performing, you know, on analytics, and we feed that data back into booking, and we are constantly changing how much you want to spend on ads, how well our ads are doing, and you know that informs, for example, you know, where we should get more cities, more OYOs. So one of the most common examples is that if you go onto the OYO app and you search on the bar, you know, which area you want to stay in, that's constantly telling search volume data is telling us which areas should we launch more OYOs in. So that's a very simple example of how we use data and analytics for growth of hotels, for growth of customers, for controlling our marketing budgets, and so on and so forth.
Okay, guys, I know that you have buses to board in the next 15 minutes. We will be wrapping up the conversation. I'm going to take the last three questions. You there, then
Hi,
here,
sir.
and
This
a
is
question here.
Mohammed Ayan.
Where are you? Stand up. Okay, there.
Hi, sir. Myself, Mohammed Ayan.
Hi,
Sir,
Mohammed.
I want to talk about the reviews of our OYO. Like, it has a positive review. Like, I have been through OYO for 2 days, I guess. But the question is, OYO also has a negative review. Like, how you overcome it?
No, I think we, again, AI and data, but we
Like, here also, I guess,
yeah.
just saw someone screamed. Yeah.
So yes, Mohammed,
It also has a negative review. You
I
overcome
think all products have positive and negative reviews. The goal is to significantly shift towards positive reviews. The power of reviews is that they come directly from customers. So our goal is to consume all of these reviews and start ranking hotels accordingly and consume reviews and see. So for example, every week we are getting review reports. The biggest complaint, for example, I can share with you, of all the reviews last week was connected to hygiene. So how do we solve for hygiene? We also use reviews to filter hotels. We have a group of hotels called Super OYOs, which are basically anything that's rated above 4 consistently giving a good experience to customers. We're also using such categorization and ranking systems to improve our experience. We do have mixed experiences, both negative and positive, but reviews is one of the most powerful tools we use because it comes directly from customers. So a long way to go, but reviews is very helpful to do that. Please keep staying at OYO and giving us positive and negative reviews.
Let me just take the last two questions here. Yeah, from you, and here. 3 questions.
So in the initial stages of starting OYO, how did you work on increasing the visibility of the company?
Good question.
And what really worked and what works now? I want to know that.
Can I just take a second question quickly here from you? Yeah.
I'll remember the question, I'll answer it.
Hello. On what basis do you convert a place into an OU? Like, what all you considered?
Okay, good. I'll start with you. In the early years, 2014 and 15, three things worked for us. The first was we actually put a lot of signages across India, if you see. So that made people understand that this brand is everywhere. They were not advertisements that we had to spend on. Of course, we had to spend on the boards because they were on our own hotels. And you'll all remember from 7 or 8 years ago that there was this red pop-up board that was popping up across streets and lanes of the country. So we went early to many cities and we put up many boards, and I think that created a lot of visibility. Second was just communication. We did a lot of PR and communication. We met a lot of journalists, media. Ritesh was a 21-year-old founder. Everybody wanted to talk to him. So I think he was also the ambassador in some ways, and today is also of telling the OYO story. So I think that made a huge difference. And the third was we tried many different techniques or marketing tactics. Some of them worked, some didn't work. Some of them worked very well for us. We used to go to, for example, industry fairs. Those didn't work for us. We used to put small booths for booking at railway stations, airports, and on the highways. Those worked for us. So just trying many different things. I forget the second question.
The second question.
Sorry, say that again. What do we look for in getting an OYO together? Or in onboarding an OYO? I think there are a bunch of things we look at. Over the years, this has evolved. When we started back in 2014-15, we looked for hotels and hotel owners who would be willing to upgrade the experience. So for example, our goal was that in every hotel, it should be at least a 6 or 8 inch mattress with white linen and self-striped or plain, right? So we established some standards over the years that we look at. We also look at whether these hotels meet these standards and whether they have a good background of delivering customer experience. And then we have they have to also have the ability to use our technology. And there are some basic thresholds set for number of staff, for do they serve food or not. So we run hotels through these audits before we onboard them. Of course, the quality changes over a period of time.
I'm just going to take the last two questions. If you could just be a little quiet, you will not be missing your buses. Don't worry. And if you miss for a day, it's all right. It's worth the experience. Let me take in the last two questions here.
Excuse me, ma'am.
No, they don't want to miss the bus.
Ma'am.
Please.
Hello, sir.
Hi.
I'm Vanita from Geetham School of Business. So I can say you are my relative. Even my father is a retired army soldier. So my question to you is, what are the future plans of OYO? And what are the differentiate between OYO and OYO Life? As you are the board member of OYO Life, can you tell me what are the services of OYO Life and the future plans?
Can I just take this last question here? This on the front row, please. You have a question? Okay, I'll just come to you.
Hello, sir. Myself Farid. As you mentioned that you had lots of ups and downs while you were growing, and imagine if you are going through a crisis. What strategies do you implement to make your company reach its goals?
Okay, I will remember that question. There's one more. Do you want to take that too?
Sir, I wanted to ask that if you can share some growth initiatives or campaigns which have impacted in the business, in the growth of OYO.
Okay, good. Starting from you, OYO Life is our student housing and apartment rental business. It's a very small business. What you're referring to my profile, that was the OYO Life business in Japan. OYO in general is just hotels and homes. So that's the big difference. Housing versus staying when you're traveling. That's the difference between life and home. And good to meet a retired army officers, soldiers child. Your question was about how do we handle crisis? I think we spoke about it. Once there is a crisis, you usually have to do the following things. You have to acknowledge that it's a crisis. A lot of startups and business leaders keep thinking it's not a crisis and they try to navigate it thinking it's just one-time challenge. COVID was like that for all of us. You would have seen in your family and friends, they took a lot of time to accept that it's a large pandemic and start wearing masks. The second thing you have to do is look at immediate response. I don't think you can handle long-term strategy when you're in the middle of crisis. What do you need to do now? Sometimes matters more than how will you come out of the crisis. And third is just over-communicating. When we had the COVID crisis at OYO, Ritesh used to do a weekly town hall with all employees. So if you have a crisis at home, in business, or while you're in college, just over-communicate with the people who matter. Okay, last question. A lot of growth initiatives that worked and didn't work. I just point at two things that worked for us. We launched the OYO app very early, ahead of time, which is still one of the largest sources of demand for this company. If you guys open the OYO app, sometimes you will see that there is a button called Nearby. There are city buttons and there's a button called Nearby. That was very unlike what others have done. It resulted in massive growth because people knew they can always find an OYO close to them, right? So instead of thinking, oh, I'm going to Pune for some travel, where will I stay? You go to Pune, you do your business, and then you just hit Nearby, like you do Uber. So that was one big growth tactic that I think worked very well for us. The second was just, which is related to this, is ensuring that we launched many cities ahead of time. In the first year of my job at OYO, 2014 and 15, we launched about 170 cities in 1 year. So I think being out there where our customers need us to be made a massive difference.
Any bikers here in the room?
Anyone loves motorcycles? Good, few. Okay, I love my motorcycles too.
Because he is an avid biker, and is that where you ideate? Is that where you kind of de-stress? And
I do. Every Saturday or Sunday, I get out on my motorcycle. The reason it works beyond in general is because one, you can use your phone while you're in a car, but not on the motorcycle. It's impossible. While you just can't. While you ride with other friends and you have companionship, you're actually still alone inside your helmet, which is a very special experience, I think. And the third is just you get to see new places that you don't when you walk or you drive in a car. You just go exploring, and wanderlust. Wanderlust is a very, very satisfying and productive fuel in general.
so yes, I think just take time off, stay away from your gadgets, ideate, enjoy your years in college. You've just started off on Geetam, and just have the courage like you had today. It took a little push and a nudge, but once the questions came up, many of you actually did come up with some great questions. So round of applause for all of you yourselves, for the journey ahead, and for Kavi. Many thanks for joining us here.
Thank you.
Can I request, in fact, Professor Vinay Kumar, the Director for Geetam School of Business, to please come up and felicitate. And I hope that many of you actually turn into entrepreneurs, that I'll still remain a journalist for life, that I get to interview in the years to come.
Thank you so much.
I love bikes too, but my wife doesn't allow me to buy too many.
We'll sneak out someday.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
I think maybe I'll invite you for the business school this thing also.
Love to come, sir. Sure, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.